Alright, here it is. The Waterloo's day of action against BillC51 and Stephen Harper's anti-terrorist agenda. Thank you.
Hey.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
What's that?
Donkers.
You can hand those people that have one one.
Territory, part of the Six Nations and Mohawk region. This is within treaty areas along the Grand River. And so I want to give recognition to the founders of this area. And I want to sing a song called the Women's Warrior Song. And this is a song that's been used to raise attention for the missing and murdered women in Canada, and has been used to promote climate change awareness and our environment, because it's all linked to the same mentality of abuse. And we need to stand united to help stop these acts of terrorism on our survivors of the Canadian genocides that occurred by the British when Canada was being settled.
Cool.
I have a Mi'kmaq ancestry, and 90% of the Mi'kmaq people were wiped away by government-sanctioned genocide. That included distribution of handkerchiefs and blankets to families on reservations and wiping out by disease. One of my ancestors was the only survivor of a family of 14, and he continued the bloodline that makes me here today. And my white Métis relatives that were living peacefully with the Aboriginal people were deported in the Canadian deportations that occurred in Nova Scotia. My family were the Aboriginal survivors of that, and ran into the woods and headed off to Nova Scotia and resettled in areas around Burton Church, Carrick, New Brunswick. So we've known genocide on these lands ourselves. We've known acts of terrorism in our lands. But what we're not seeing is the recognition by the government about those acts against the people who lived here prior to the development of this country. And to this day, missing and murdered women represent the largest demographic of murdered women in Canada.
Trying to get into some trouble.
Aboriginal people represent the largest demographic incarcerated in jails.
I want to get on the list.
And that's got to change. Harper and yet he allowed Afghan prisoners to be given over for torture and death during the Afghan war. And here he is claiming to trying to stop terrorism while negating the acts that could have prevented this kind of abuse. It's a bit of a hypocrisy. The question remains, why now? If you've read Bill 51, you will see it as a broad, sweeping omnibus bill affecting all legislations. It will give CSIS the right to investigate our taxes, to investigate our medical records, to investigate all kinds of personal information without merit, without warrant, without oversight or accountability. And if you complain about it, there's no one to complain to because they haven't established that system. We cannot allow these vulnerabilities to exist, to continue to erode what our ancestors fought to protect, which is the freedom of all Canadian people, both native and non-native. Our ancestors Harper makes laws to break laws, and we've got to stop.
We can do it too.
So now I would like to announce a representative from Fair Vote Canada who will be coming up here to show how we can work towards electoral reform to remove people like Harper.
Okay, hi everyone, good morning. And on behalf of Fair Vote Canada, Waterloo Region Chapter, I'd like to thank you for coming today and thank the leaders of Lead Now for putting together this day of action. It's really great to see so many people out today. Waterloo Region joins 69 other communities across the country in a day of action against another attack by the Harper government on our basic democratic rights. So a couple of people have said to me, why bother to oppose Bill C51? It is going to be enacted. They have a majority, they do what they want. And my response to that is, well, there are 36 million reasons to oppose Bill C51. And our democratic right to individual privacy, freedom of expression, and the right to peaceful protest. It's been clear for a long time that the Harper government doesn't support those rights. We'll recall the G20 summit in Toronto in June of 2011 as a precursor to what we can expect if and when Bill C51 is enacted without any change. Usually when we speak on behalf of Fair Vote Canada, the comments are on why we need to change the way we vote or the way we count our votes to build a stronger and healthier democracy. But it's clear with last year's Fair Elections Act and now with Bill C51 that we have to pedal faster and harder to simply maintain what we have in this country. So, you know, and this is a government that learns fast. They learned from last year's pushback against the Fair Elections Act that citizens can organize and insist on change. And we had time to do that last year. And this year we don't have as much time to organize. But we do as citizens, and as citizens who are concerned, there are things we can do. And if you haven't yet, I would greatly encourage you to write, email, phone, or ask for an appointment with Peter, Stephen, Harold, or Gary, depending on where you live in this region. What a bunch. But they're what we've got, and we have to work with them. So this is an election year.
Get off your fucking cell phones!
I would really encourage you to make that contact and make it be known that this isn't acceptable to us, that the further attacks to erode our democratic rights isn't acceptable, and they will pay for that at the ballot box whenever we get there. Thank you very much. So is there anyone else here today that would like to say a few words about what they think or what they believe and feel about this? Okay, who we got?
We have the new leader of the Kitchener Green Party. My apologies, that's Kitchener. Waterloo.
We've got it's a bit of a misnomer. I'm Richard Walsh. I'm not the leader of the Kitchener Green Party. I'm the candidate for the Waterloo Greens.
Oh, my apologies.
Right. So thank you. And by the way, this demonstration was organized not by Lead Now. Lead Now sent out a broadcast, as you probably know, nationally, but the local group that organized this event is the Alliance Against Poverty, which is a local grassroots organization of roughly a dozen people. We did it, not Lead Now. And sign up if you'd like to be notified of future Alliance Against Poverty events. Thank you, Nadine. So there are a couple of people who would like to speak today. I'm not going to give a speech. Actually, I'm, with your blessing, going to engage in a kind of outdoor citizen seminar. I'm going to pose some questions. I'll elicit some answers. We'll have a debate, or at least lots of opinions flying around this large group of people. I think that's a better use of our time than you're standing passively listening to somebody drone on about what he or she thinks is wrong with Bill C51. Nevertheless, there are a couple of people who do wish to speak, and one of them is a member of AAP. Her name is Nadine Quayle, and she's going to read for us a statement by another Green Party candidate, David Weber, and Nadine has David's statement today. David, by the way, is a police officer in Waterloo region, so he has a unique perspective on Bill C51. Nadine?
Thanks, Richard. And David Weaver is also a Green Party candidate in the Kitchener-Conestoga riding as well. Okay, so this is his perspective, and again, he's doing policing in the Cambridge area. Having done policing for 3 decades, I have seen an enormous amount of procedural change in the job. One recent change is officers not having to do an official return to the Justice of the Peace to report when we have seized cell phone information. This is meant to make it less cumbersome to do the job for what we would do anyway. But if we are doing it rarely, a return of information reporting to a justice is simple and not a big deal. When requiring no returns, there is no way for an agency outside of policing to track how often seizures are made. This can also increase the use of such investigative activity when there is no accountability. This is one example that might make the average police officer happy, but worries me about the quality of our society. The new anti-terror legislation in Bill C51 is claimed to be about protecting us. I think it is more about making it easier to lock people up before they can cause much dissent. That is, silencing the difference of opinion before others get swayed to speak up themselves. Consider the contrast between our old laws standing on their own in regards to lawful picketing, causing a disturbance, and trespassing, and what these offenses become when the anti-terror legislation is finalized. Trespassing to picket an oil pipeline is a $65 fine. The Tough on Terror legislation says it doesn't apply to lawful protesters, but once you commit that illegal act of trespassing during a protest, you now become a terrorist by the legislation's definition. You are also a terrorist if you are engaged in a non-violent protest that has a large assembly of people without a permit to march, or what have you, that a local municipality says you're required to congregate, so that you are no longer part of a lawful protest. The Criminal Code of Canada has long had offences for spying, treason, making bombs, and detonating them in terrorist acts, sedition, etc. We already have ability to gather intelligence on known radical operators. The increased spying bill will watch every citizen under a microscope without any serious oversight at a much increased cost with no safety gain. It will not stop the lone wolf operators who strike without communications being shared beforehand. It will suppress free communication of citizens to talk about how oil pipelines are a bad thing, because when the government is supporting them and claiming they are part of our healthy economy, your opposition makes you against our secure economy and therefore a terrorist. Suspected terrorists being held without a right to a lawyer or notifying family or friends that you are in custody. This proposed measure signals the rise of the police state. This is the end of many of our rights for freedom. We are allowing our government to eliminate freedoms we have had our fathers and grandfathers fight in wars to protect.
I've got
The
those things to
citizens
hand
of
out.
Germany gave away their rights similarly
Write something on the
pre-World
back
War
or whatever
II.
if you want.
Turkey is currently
I'm gonna keep
passing the same legislation as Canada's Bill C51. But in Turkey, there are chairs and punches being thrown in government. In the argument between those who are pro-free and those who are pro-surveillance with a forfeiture of rights. We might not want to resort to punches, but we should not accept this legislation. Our freedom is worth too much to allow it to be taken away.
Thank you very much, Nadine, for reading David Weber's thoughts. Again, David Weber is the Green Party candidate for Kitchener-Conestoga. If you're wondering why there's such a large Green Party presence here today, it's because the Green Party has a leader who is the most assertive leader in Canada. And Elizabeth May, as this gentleman just said, tells us what's going on and is the first to oppose Bill C51. Okay, folks, I understand that, or at least I sent a message to the Waterloo Labour Council asking if someone from the Labour Council would like to speak and give a Labour Council perspective on Bill C51. Is there someone from the Labour Council who would like to speak on behalf of Labour in Waterloo region? I look to my left, I look straight ahead, I look to my right. Ah, nuts. Oh well, at least the invitation went out. It's important, of course, to consider working people, not merely because of the Labour Council, but because everybody assembled here today, to some degree or another, is affected by the nature of work, the quality of work, the conditions of the economy, a resource-based economy, and that is simply not the logic of sustainable. And the fact that Canada is a nation that institutionalizes poverty, no If there's someone else who is dying, you can grab the microphone from yourself. So they go, sure, now we see someone. Sure.
Hello everyone, my name is Julian Ickham. I was one of the so-called G20 conspiracists, and I felt firsthand what dirty ops feel like. Recently, I went to visit the north of Ireland in November to do a fact-finding mission. In fact, the law that they're passing right here, the anti-terrorist bill, is modeled on the 2001 UK Anti-Terrorist Act, and I'll speak about that in a second. First, I'll tell you what happened when I tried to take a plane back. So, when I was down there, I interviewed women that had their sons killed by loyalist violence. I interviewed people who had their husbands taken away without trial. I interviewed people who did 4 years in jail for simply saying something like victory to the IRA. On my way out of the country, coming back to Canada, the flight I was taking was a US flight. They told me, it was coming to Canada, but it was a US airline. They told me to get on the plane, and they told me to go to my room. I was okay. And they said, you're not allowed to get on the plane. They didn't agree with that. They're like, you're under administrative detention. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Here's a lawyer's phone number. Call them. They took it, they photocopied it. They went to my bag, they photocopied everything in my bag, strip searched me, fingerprinted me, retina scanned me, and interrogated me for 5.5 hours. Now, I was smart. I took the plane out of Dublin, not out of Belfast, because Dublin is Ireland and is not the occupied north, so MI6 and MI5 don't run the place. So they handed me, after they held me for 5.5 hours, they handed me to Irish Gardaí security, and they were like, this guy's a very dangerous terrorist, blah, 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 blah. The Gardaí guy looked at me and laughed, but he had to say, you have 2 days to get out of this country, or we're going to have to put you in immigration detention. I lost my plane ticket and all of that, but the thing was, more than that, the United States was able to detain me for simply trying to talk out about what was going in Ireland, for going and doing a fact-finding mission. This law, and currently I'm on the US terrorist list. That, like, I am on the terrorist list, so if I go to the United States, I can be indefinitely detained. If I go to the US Embassy, I can be indefinitely detained. If I go to any American stuff, I can get indefinitely detained. So I have a personal interest in this bill not being passed. I've also seen what this bill does by seeing what the UK 2001 Anti-Terrorist Act does. So first we have the case of Miriam Price. She was a member of the 32 County Sovereignty Movement, which rejects occupation. She did 2.5 years in solitary confinement after doing 9 months in an all-men's jail, Montgomery, for simply holding up a piece of paper at a rally that someone read, that they purported was a member of the IRA. So they didn't say that she was a member of the IRA, they didn't say she had anything to do with the IRA, she held up a piece of paper. There's also the case of Martin Corey, who was a 71-year-old man who did 2.5 years in solitary confinement on secret with a secret trial, diplock court. Diplock court is what they want to bring here, where a police officer can say, we have reason to believe that they may have knowledge of terrorism, or they may be promoting terrorism, which in the north of Ireland simply means speaking out against the British occupation. And he did 2.5 years in solitary confinement before he was finally released. This guy was 71 years old. We have the case of Christine Connors. She's 21 years old. She's accused by police officers of attacking the British occupational forces. The evidence they used against her, they had 100 police officers at her trial. They had no witnesses that she was involved at all, was Facebook messages. Messages such as, it is obvious that the PSNI, RUC are the enemies of the Irish people. Facebook messages like, do not talk to the police. Stuff like that. So these 100 cops, and she's already did 2.5 years in a really, really horrible jail. The jails there aren't like the ones here, they're like really, really nasty. And simply for Facebook. And these are the laws they want to bring over here. Someone looks at my Facebook, I'm definitely screwed. Finally, I'd like to talk about the case of the Cregavin 2. They were 2 young people. One of them was 17 years old when he was arrested. 6 years in jail he's done so far. He was accused of a shooting of an RUC officer. The witness, Witness M, is a secret witness. His father came forward, the father of Witness M, and said Witness M is lying. It turned out in court that Witness M wasn't where he said he was the night this happened. And because it's secret evidence, none of this can be challenged. When Witness M's father came forward, MI6 went and interrogated him and tried to stop him from testifying. There were 3 questions asked at the appeal. Is there any evidence linking them to the shooting beyond a reasonable doubt? No. Is there any evidence that they in any way assisted in this shooting? No. Is there any evidence beyond a reasonable doubt in any way linking them to this crime? No. At this point in time, they are doing life imprisonment in Montgomery. These are the laws they want to bring here, where a police officer can just say, I think this person may be engaged in terrorism. These are the laws they want to bring here. And the people that are going to be attacked by these laws aren't the trade unionists. It's going to be the indigenous people. It's going to be the Muslim people. It's going to be the people that are speaking out against the Canadian occupation here and abroad. And as such, we should all raise our voices Because we see what these laws do, and we do not want a military police state here. We've seen what this has done in Ireland, and we do not want this here. Thank you.
God bless Julian Aitken's passion. Thank you, brother. It's wonderful that he visited the home of the ancestors, don't you know? Friends, I'm aware that there might be members of other political parties present who might wish to represent a political party's position with regard to Bill C51. I see a few New Democrats in the crowd. There might even be a few liberals in the crowd. There might even be some conservatives. Is there a representative from any of these parties who wishes to?
Doesn't make any sense.
It looks like it's Scott Kwiatkowski.
Hi there. I'm the president of the Waterloo Federal NDP, and I'm proud to be a member of the party whose representatives have voted against this legislation at every step, whose members of parliament filibustered in committee until the number of witnesses were increased, who have introduced amendments to the legislation that would effectively gut it. And I am proud to be a member of a party that will scrap this legislation if they are elected. So I think that it's great that so many people are out here. October is a ways away, but we've got an election to win, and we've got a government to defeat. So I call on all of you to get involved. It can be for any party that is firmly opposed to this legislation, but there are many, many reasons to defeat Stephen Harper, and this is certainly one of them. We do not have to deal with the threat of terrorism by exchanging our security for, our freedoms for security. We need to have both. We have existing legislation that prohibits terrorism, and we do not need to pass this bill.
Thank you very much, Scott. That's great. Is there someone who wishes to represent another political party before we continue? There is. Is there someone? Did you wish to? No, not a political party. I see. Did you wish to make a comment? Yes. Thank you. Welcome.
My name is Greg Mikolenko, and I represent a newly formed group called BAH, Birdwatchers Against Harper. You may recall that one of our most bird-brained cabinet ministers alluded to environmentalists being terrorists. I thought, this is absurd, but apparently they're paranoid enough to believe it. The local birdwatchers club is called Waterloo Region Nature, and they're peaceful. We are peaceful people. We're as happy as bluebirds, as honest as meadowlarks, as pleasant as pheasants. You could go on and on for the whole alphabet. Well, a few months ago, at the monthly meeting, there was a presentation about bees and wasps and other insects, and there's a new insecticide that is killing them all off, and the apiarists who provide our honey are very worried about it. So Waterloo Region Nature wanted to express its concern to the Minister of the Environment, and a very gentle, meek letter was sent to them. The outcome was an audit by the Canadian Revenue Agency. No one likes that, do we? But it is quite scary. The Sierra Club is being audited. Environmental Defense is as well. And if you want to see the ultimate outcome of that sort of behavior, you can go to Russia. Putin has managed to disassemble almost all civil society opposition organizations. The way it's done is he drums up phony tax evasion charges, tries the executives with crooked judges and sentence them routinely to 5 to 7 years. So, Mr. Harper, I think you're Putin light. L-I-T-E.
Thank you very much, Greg. That was terrific. We have a few other people who would like to make some comments, and one of them is Marty Schuter, the former candidate for the Communist Party of Canada. Marty?
Just a couple of words that I think that people need to be aware of. The Tories keep telling everybody that oh, there's no need to worry about this bill because it won't affect peaceful dissent. He said it only targets unlawful dissent. Well, any act of civil disobedience, no matter how mild, is by nature unlawful. So, and I think this is not lost on people who are activists, but I think it's totally lost on the general non-activist population. They hear, oh well, I'm not worried about this because I don't do anything unlawful, but this is going to target, I mean, if we were to march down King Street and block the street,
We should.
that is technically unlawful. That would make us subject to not just monitoring, but disruption by CSIS, by the RCMP, by the provincial police, by the local police, and it would all be legal under this bill.
Thank you very much, Marty, for raising our consciousness on those very important aspects of this needed legislation. We have a question being posed from someone yonder. So the question is, does this gathering have a permit?
No. Nick just said
The answer is
no, we do not. Here soon.
This is wonderful. Congratulations, everybody. I love your courage. We have a young man, a graduate student. Oh, his name is Braden McNeil. He's also a member of the Alliance Against Poverty. He's the chief cook and bottle washer for this event. And Braden has a few comments.
Thanks for coming out, everybody. I just want to say one thing about what really worries me about this bill. You know, there's all these provisions in the legislation that will impact individuals. You know, if you happen to be arrested for being a suspected terrorist or something, you know, you'll be able to be detained for 7 days as opposed to 2 without detention. And, you know, these impacts on the individual are pretty important, but I think they pale in comparison to the impact on the community. So in the papers they talk about, or at least in one of the papers I read, you know, they talk about the chilling effect that will come about because of this bill. I'm an environmentalist. Last year I took place in an illegal pipeline blockade, and I'm okay with that, and I think that's great. Like Marty was saying, that's civil disobedience, and it's absolutely required in a democracy. But I just want to make a bit of an analogy or a metaphor, and before I say it, I don't want to alienate anybody. I have nothing but love for Alcoholics Anonymous, but I'm going to make a hurtful generalization here. But say the government, you know, for whatever reason they decide that Alcoholics Anonymous tends to have a lot of petty thieves, or people who get into fights at bars or whatever. You know, maybe it's a fair generalization. I'm not saying that it is. That's why I'm being careful here. But basically, if the government starts watching Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, it'll put a chill on the whole organization. And maybe 1 out of every 100 alcoholics will decide that they don't want to go to Alcoholics Anonymous because the government is surveilling them. So if 1 or 2 out of every 100 people doesn't get the help that they need because of some stupid law, you know, then you're putting a chill on the whole community. So yeah, I just think that's awful. Like, the people need to be involved in things, in civil disobedience, for anything to actually get done. If you're an anti-petroleum activist, that's important to you. It's also important to Canada as a whole. But you know, this law is going to make it so that maybe 1 out of every 100 or 2 out of every 100 anti-petroleum activists, they just won't get involved. And so the important things that we need to do as a society won't get done. So that's all I wanted to say. It's the chilling effect. It's pretty chilling.
Thank you very much, Braden. Arrive. The return of Nadine.
Thank you. Speaking of the chilling effect, I don't know if any of you read Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. If you don't, check it out. It's online as well. A recent article in their most recent newsletter talked about a chilling effect that I don't know if we've mentioned yet today. But dear Mr. Harper has certainly made it clear his anti-Muslim sentiments. And there's already a huge chilling effect going on. I don't know if you've heard about what's going on in Quebec right now, but many of the people who are trying to get permits to build a mosque are simply being denied them for no good reason at all. This C51 is not only going to affect a lot of us, but let's say, for example, a group of Muslim youth that someone happens to know belong to a certain mosque are just having a conversation somewhere. They could be talking about the movies. They could be talking about anything. This legislation will make it completely legal for them to be arrested on the suspicion that they might commit a terrorist act. This is not okay.
Thank you, Nadine, for pointing out yet another odious aspect of this horrific bill. There is a gentleman who wishes to speak. And he's carrying a sign. Hey, tar-faced protest terrorist. Protesters with terrorists, arrest me. Sir, we arrest you in the name of the truth.
Thank you. Can I get a photo with that arrest? Hi, my name is Dan Williams. I've been out of the protest aspect of life for about 10 years, but this one's really got my goat. We could have a debate on things that are worthy of protest, whether it be the massive health care, or the inequity in wages, or the list goes on and on. I think that you get my point. But this bill takes away the right of people to participate in a democracy. What that will do, in my opinion, is make people more apathetic, more desensitized to what goes on, more just generally complacent about what goes on in politics, and there'll be less willingness to get involved and participate. And I believe that's a plan, to make people fed up with politicians and less interested in getting involved. I have been talking it up for the last few weeks about this bill, and I am extremely surprised at how many people do not know about this. I was concerned. I wanted to go to Toronto this morning. I was concerned that there wouldn't be much of a turnout here, and I'm just elated to see the number of people that are here. But to me, the people that are here are great. The people that are here, we have a real job to do, and it's not only protest C51, it's to engage other people to get them active. I spoke to family members, the kids, and their partners, and I tried to get them to come to this protest today. They're all of voting age. I don't see one of them here. When we get home, we'll have another little chat, but I just think there's a really important job. I had this debate at work every day this week. I pissed so many people off. I don't see anybody from work here.
got some good-
Our job is to very gently nudge people to get off their asses. Thanks.
I'm just gonna come with, man.
Okay.
Warm up too.
Yeah, I'm freezing, man.
And now we have another guest speaker. And an economist at that, lo and behold.
An economist?
My name is Faith. I'm an economist, which by nature tends to be a rather conservative profession. My partner is a criminal lawyer. He's worked at the Department of Justice under Peter MacKay, and he's also worked in public safety under Stephen Blaney. And one thing I think that is being left out of the discussion is actually the legal perspective on the nature of Bill C51. A lot of Canadians who tend to be more center or right of center tend to dismiss the protest as being something they don't have to worry about because it is something that only the progressives or the indigenous or the Muslims or the protesters have to worry about. And what people don't realize is that there is legal consensus that this bill is very poorly constructed and it's very dangerously constructed. So 4 former prime ministers, Paul Martin, Jean Chrétien, John Turner, and Conservative Prime Minister Joe Clark have all signed a letter saying that this is a dangerous bill. We also have 5 former Supreme Court justices, including a former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So these include Justice Louise Arbour, who is very well respected in the international legal community. We also have Justice Bastarache, Michel Bastarache, and Justice Claire Leroux-Dubé, who have all opposed this. There were 100 legal scholars and law professors from McGill University, from Osgoode Hall, from the University of Toronto, from the University of British Columbia, so it's the most respected Canadian law school. All of these law professors have signed this letter, this public letter, saying that this bill needs to be opposed. Even Rex Murphy, who is a very conservative journalist, has said that Canadians need to act against this. So right now in Parliament, there are parliamentary committees that are reviewing the bill. And these are a farce. They have not permitted Danielle Terrien, who is the privacy watchdog of CSIS, to testify in front of us. They have not permitted the 4 former prime ministers to testify. They have forbidden many members of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association from testifying. And in the question periods that they had yesterday, the only question that was posed by a minister in the first session of the committee was to the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, and he asked them, why are you so opposed to getting terrorists off the street? Which is a complete, it is a reminiscent of McCabe's, why are you against arresting child pornographers? Like, it is the nature of the language that they're putting out that is troubling, it stifles dissent, and it, according to legal scholars who have assessed this bill, who are experts in this, it is extremely dangerous. And so I'm appealing to the centrists, to the right of center, to the close to left of center, people who might not come out here today to realize that there are people from across the political spectrum who are incredibly opposed to this, and that it is a concern for everyone. And I have a quote from Benjamin Franklin, actually, that says, any society that is willing to give up its essential liberties for the semblance of security deserves neither and will lose both. Oppose Bill
We repeat, across the political spectrum,
Do you know where that quote came from?
Opposition. Canadians are united against this legislation. There are a few more people who need to
Fathers of
speak.
the United States, Franklin or
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Walter Schultz. I'm a legal professional here in Waterloo Region, and for some reason very nervous. Hello. For some reason I should be used to talking to crowds, but here I am, because I've never protested before, ever. This bill utterly guts various sections of our protected Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Look at it line by line and go, what? What? And then you think to yourself, okay, we really have some serious considerations to make here. You just talked on the topic I was thinking about with, this is not a political issue. This is a Canadian issue. It affects all Canadians. And I look across the crowd, and it's a cross-section of our country. It's everybody of every type of background, belief, and trade, whatever. We're Canadians, and we're united with a cause about this bill that causes us to go, what? And so you asked for different political specs and such like that, and I'm not surprised not to see any conservatives here, but again, when you just say to them, if you've got a conservative friend, to say, okay, are you supporting a bill that adheres to your belief of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms? It went into act in 1982. We don't let it die 33 years later.
Again, thank you very much. A legal perspective. I believe there is someone else who would like to speak, please.
Fair enough, so that you won't be necessary.
My name is Gloria Martin. I'm a local citizen. And I don't know about you, but I feel like weeping. And I've not been able to sleep because of this bill. It has shaken me. I'm not one to protest either, but I think, you know, we sing, "Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee." How exactly are we standing on guard for thee? I was asking myself that question. And, you know, this is like a death to our rights and freedoms. And I thought it appropriate as a symbolic act to have 2 minutes of silence to our rights and freedoms. And if you would, with me, just bow our heads and give two minutes of silence and really consider the seriousness of what this bill